Arrest her! She's a thief! My boyfriend shouted to the cops. Yes, it was my boyfriend, Lucas, and he turned me in to the police. Needless to say, I didn't expect such a twist. But here I am, with my hands in handcuffs, and there's my boyfriend sitting with his eyes downcast. He's ashamed. Why? I'll explain everything right now. To make a long story short, here's how it went. I grew up in poverty, and for as long as I can remember, I've been involved in stealing. Yes, I'm a pickpocket, but I have one principle: stealing from the rich. After all, can't those who have everything spare $20 to save my day from hunger? Well, alright, I earned a decent amount each day, but I stole from the wealthy without causing them any harm. One day I managed to rob one of those rich guys. I took a watch worth $10,000 from him, thinking I could sell it to an acquaintance on the black market for half the price. But that guy turned out to be too observant. He caught me by the hand. I couldn't escape. He put me in his car, and instead of handing me over to the police, he said that I was incredibly beautiful for a thief. And it was true. I had succeeded in terms of looks and figure, but as my life experience had shown me, money is more important than beauty. Although I must admit, in this situation, my beauty is what saved me. Instead of taking me into the police, he took me to a luxurious place, treated me to steak, and started interrogating me. I decided to hide the truth and only told him part of it, that I stole for the first time out of necessity and that I would never do it again. Lucas then offered me a deal. For the evening, I would pretend to be his girlfriend at home, and he'd pay me for it. At first I refused, but then he mentioned a substantial payment. How much? Are you really going to pay me $3,000 just to pretend to be your girlfriend? Yeah, this evening is important to me. My grandma will be there and she's very concerned. I don't want to upset her. Why me? Why wouldn't any other girl agree for that kind of money? You're beautiful, and that's also very important. There aren't many beautiful girls among my acquaintances. Pfft, piece of cake. He bought me expensive things, shoes, and accessories. 2 days later, he picked me up and brought me to his home for dinner. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off me the whole way, complimenting my beauty. I have to admit, I've never had a boyfriend before, mainly because I didn't have the time. After all, I had other important responsibilities. Well, okay, I enjoyed how he behaved. We arrived at his home, where there was a small circle of family members. Lucas was surprised, but I knew how to conduct myself in high society. Don't ask me how. I just knew how to behave properly and which topics to engage in. At some point, I even wanted all of this to be true. Sitting with my wealthy, handsome boyfriend at the same table as his family, everything going well, everyone happy. I wouldn't need to risk my life and freedom every day just to provide, well, to help some important people survive. I started feeling uneasy, almost like crying. I got up from the table and went to the restroom. After 5 minutes, I returned, and Lucas, apologizing, said it was time for me to go home and he'd drive me. His relatives asked me to stay a little longer, but I understood that he wanted to leave. Lucas took my purse and handed it to me, indicating that it really was time to go. And so, the fairy tale ended. I said my goodbyes and left the house, but before we reached the car, the maid ran out screaming that the hostess's necklace was missing, meaning Lucas's mother's necklace. "It's her! She stole the necklace!" shouted my boyfriend. My jaw dropped in surprise. I wanted to say, "Are you out of your mind?" But before I could, the security searched my purse and found that very necklace. "You son of a bitch!" I shouted at Lucas. "How could you do this to me?" The police arrived in an instant, and Lucas, answering their questions, once again claimed that I stole his mother's necklace. They took me to the police station, along with Lucas and his mother. While she ran around, talking to her lawyer and being shocked by me, I sat still and just looked into Lucas's eyes. "Stop looking at me like that." "So this was your plan? What else could I do? Grandma wants me to get married, and I'm still a schoolboy. I want to have fun. And you decided to take advantage of me. You'll tell them that you loved me, that you have an injury, and they'll back off with their proposals? Are you an idiot? Don't you think your grandmother will just find a bride for you herself?" Damn it, I didn't think about that. "You don't understand what you're doing. I thought they'd release you in a day or two, and they'd leave me alone. I'm sorry." He didn't understand what it meant, what even a single day meant to me. Our acquaintance, Andrew, a cop, approached us. He was a friend of my deceased nanny from the shelter. "How are you, pickpocket?" As you can see, I'm a frequent guest here. Lucas didn't know what to say. He felt ashamed, and then he asked what he could do to fix this. Confess, I said curtly, and pay me $5,000 for emotional distress, you jerk. After this incident, his family asked me for forgiveness. But there's more good news. His grandmother bought a small house for me and my children. So, Lucas, if you're watching this video, know that you're a jerk, but you do have a good family. Oh no, what to do? I hacked into the president's account and learned something super secret, and this event changed my life forever. Hi everyone, I'm Ava, and I'm from Moldova. Now I'll tell you about how one day I accidentally managed to hack into the account of the president of the country. Okay, one of the former ones, but that's not the point. What I learned there shocked not only me, but it also affected my entire future. My mother worked as a cook in that house for many years, and so did my grandmother. As I grew up, my mother was already preparing me for the same position, which was already the third generation in the family. Of all the servants, for some reason, the president treated me with great awe. This is because I was born and raised in the house as a true, devoted servant. His granddaughter, Evelina, periodically visited him. She hated me, just like I hated her. And then one day, she deliberately broke the owner's favorite vase. It was presented to him by an old friend from Germany. The item was so valuable. I knew about it and immediately ran inside. Instead of apologizing, Evelina shouted, "Grandfather, look what she's done! This is awful! Your favorite vase!" My legs buckled from fear. How could she? It wasn't me. Honestly, it wasn't me. I tried to justify myself, but the owner just frowned silently and ordered me into his office. This meant a serious conversation. When he entered, I was already standing there and trembling all over from fear. "Don't be afraid, it's all right. I know Evelina did it," he said. What? Seriously? I exhaled in relief and then asked him why he called me into his office. He then asked for my help. "You know I'm an old man and I don't understand these things, but my German friend wants to talk via a video link. Please help me to set up my social network." Seriously? I thought, and just agreed. When I got onto his laptop, I opened the desired page and a password was required. Maybe I just knew him too well, but I managed to guess the password within 3 attempts since he didn't remember it. He himself was surprised at my hacking abilities. And then someone called him and he left the office, and private messages with his German friend opened up in front of me. Everything should have been fine, but suddenly photos of my mother and even my grandmother popped up. It was weird. What were they doing there? And a minute later, I saw the truth. My legs gave out again, my heart raced, and then the president came in. "What's wrong with you, Ava?" Are you my grandfather?" The president immediately approached me and saw that the evidence was irrefutable. I had such a mess in my head. He immediately told me to remain silent, admitting that he and my grandmother had once had an affair, and my mother still didn't know who her father is. My grandmother has long since been retired and lives in another country, as per his request. My hands were shaking. A lump formed in my throat. How could I live with a secret? And then the president offered me a bribe for my silence. Firstly, he allocated my mother and me a separate house on the territory with all amenities, where only the two of us would live. He raised my mother's salary and promised a monthly bonus. He secretly bought me architecture courses and promised to help me get through college. At first, I rejoiced. I was so excited by the clothes he bought with his money, phones, and trips to beauty salons. But then, everything became clear. Evelina developed a special attitude. At first, the mean girl tried to spoil the food cooked by my mother, scratched his cars, stole everything from me, ruined expensive roses in the garden, and blamed everything on my mother. There was no reaction from the president, and it infuriated her even more. One day, there was a special reception at the house. A German friend of the president arrived. He gave a bunch of gifts to all the family members, and when everyone left for the dining room, he unexpectedly gave my mother a super beautiful scarf, saying what kind of delicious dishes she'd made him. Mom was pleasantly surprised. But Evelina, seeing this gesture, went berserk. She took the gift from my mother and shouted, "You don't deserve this! Have you heard about it? You were born a servant, and you'll die as one." Anger boiled up in me, but my mother, instead of putting this bastard in her place, simply bowed and asked for her forgiveness. For what? She's your aunt by status. She has the same rights as you, mean girl, I screamed. I grabbed the scarf, twisted it in my hands, and threw it around Evelina's neck, and then threw her on the floor. Evelina screamed as if she'd been hurt. The president and his friend pulled us apart. The servants were in shock. My mother begged for them to excuse my behavior, and I was breathing in anger like a dragon. I was already preparing to shout again that I was his granddaughter, just like Evelina, and then something unexpectedly happened. "You love her more than me, Grandpa!" shouted Evelina. What? What are you talking about, honey? Everyone knows, and my mother and grandmother too. This is your daughter, and this is your granddaughter, and you've always loved them more. Why? Mom became ill. I brought her water and sat her in a chair. All members of the family were standing nearby. It seems that only my mother and the other servants didn't know about this secret. Now I understood why Evelina hated me so much. After this incident, my mother and I could no longer stay there, and the president bought us a house in another country, where we went forever. However, he still comes to visit us from time to time, and he asked me not to tell anyone about it.